Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars, and today from Autohaus of Naples on, this time of year, at least this winter, I can't complain too much about the weather. I'm not even sure if it's officially winter yet, but the temperature here is definitely milder. I mean, today is going to be a little bit hot in the middle of the day. It might even hit 90, which of course sucks, but overall, for the last couple of weeks, the weather here has been stellar, and I can't complain. The mornings have been lovely. The evenings have been lovely. I stay in the air conditioning during midday, and it's just fantastic. So this truly is the time when Naples comes into its own, and when I'm actually happy to be here. And I'm not gonna, there's also these guys, when it gets a little bit cold, they start bitching about that. I'm like, man, go back to July, for Christ's sake, and start dealing with that again. I mean, don't give me your crying about any kind of temperature. This is paradise right now, and we've certainly earned it. And I can't say that I'm unhappy about it. So, weather bitching is out for the moment. If we have an unusually hot winter, it'll of course come back. But supposedly we're supposed to have a decent one, and I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since the last video. I apologize for that. I do this frequently. I know that I've been very unsteady with the videos lately, but, for one, I just haven't had that many cars that have inspired me come into my sphere, or have been unlucky enough to get cars coming in that I've already done. Like, I've been doing stuff on Bring a Trailer, selling cars, kind of brokering cars for people locally, and a guy came to me the other day with a beautiful 56 T-Bird to do. Well, god damn it, I just did a 56 T-Bird video, so that really doesn't help me. It just seems weird that of all the cars out there, I end up getting duplicates. But what the hell are you going to do? I've also been posting over on Twitter, or X as it's called now, having a bit of fun with that. Have been for a while. And it's just nice to touch base with the community, if you will, and, talk about some interesting car shit. So if you're not on Twitter, it might be worth signing up. If you are, then have a look and subscribe, and we'll see what we have going. But all in all, it's not been bad. My lady friend, I mentioned before, she set up a bunch of bird feeders around the house because quite obviously she hates me. I can't say that I blame her, I really can't. We have one of those relationships, but, the only reason she would have done that, and there's now like 3 bird feeders on top of all the seed she's thrown around on the ground, so it is a total Hitchcock movie. Every time I come home, I'm surrounded by shrieking birds, dive bombing me, flying around. There's a cardinal and his homely wife flying around, and it just seems grossly unfair, but, again, I think I've been punished in this life for shit that I did in prior lives. I once went to a psychic fair with her. This is the kind of thing men do for their lady friends, at least in the beginning, and I did that. And I went there, and they, threw crystal, whatever the hell they do at these places, and I got read by some woman who said, that I am being severely punished for how awful I was in prior lives. And while that, that kind of made everything make sense for me. It brought the whole thing together, but anyway, her bird shit is out of control. Penelope, we haven't talked about her in a while, my well-to-do friend with the feminine hygiene products, the magnate. She's off in California at the moment, staying at Big Bear, where I once stayed with Andrew. I've talked about it, the guy with all the guns in the car, and who's one of the most evil people I've met. We were there once for I visited Jay Leno's garage, saw Jay Leno. He made fun of my shirt, which is ridiculous, the guy who dresses like that, but he did, and it was a great time. And now Penelope's out there. She's staying in the same place. She bought some kind of an airplane that she had to go out there and get factory training on, and apparently it has a parachute of some kind, which I think is cheating. I really do. I mean, if you're going to buy an airplane, then suck up the consequences. If you're a shit pilot, you don't get to just pull a lever and all of a sudden you've got a parachute that comes out. I just find it to be distasteful, and one of these modern things where people get to avoid consequences, and I don't think it's very cool at all. But anyway, look, I'm not going to ramble on. We're going to jump right into this car and get, as my nephew keeps telling me, the videos, I got to keep them concise, keep them pithy, or, whatever the hell he says. And he's probably not wrong. So we're going to get back into this car, which is a 1992 Mitsubishi 3000GT. This is the SL version, which I have borrowed from Autohaus. Probably, if I got to go pick the version of this car that I wanted to do, this wouldn't be it, but it's fine. It was here, it was available, and I grabbed it. And I haven't done one of these before, and they were a car of my youth to some extent in the 90s, and I'm kind of enjoying doing it. 92 was kind of an interesting year. You had Hurricane Andrew, which devastated much of the east coast of Florida. You had NAFTA passing, which devastated much of the entire continental I don't know, maybe not. Ross Perot, if you remember him, he was a lot of fun back in the time. Wayne's World was in the theaters, Unforgiven, Reservoir Dogs. If you turned on the radio, you might get Pearl Jam or Nirvana. It feels like yesterday, and instead it's 30 friggin' years ago, which just shows how old I am. Drives me crazy. But anyway, it's fun for me because in 92, or at least in 93, because it wasn't new, I had a 1992 Mitsubishi Galant, which I really didn't appreciate at the time because I was an idiot kid. And frankly, it was given to me. So it was just something I really didn't appreciate. And I beat the living shit out of it. Even a pack of savages walked across it at a Lollapalooza concert once, put dents all over the hood and roof. And, sometimes you just wish you could go back and be a better human. But, anyway, there it is. But it was a good car. It was high quality. It transported me through really ridiculously obnoxious and awkward times with more grace than I really deserved. And that's why it's a bit sad for me to see Mitsubishi in something of a decline now. Basically catering to buyers with credit issues too severe to buy a Nissan. Or otherwise focusing on a lower price against the competition. They just seem like a shadow of their former selves. But in 1990, like most of industrial Japan, Mitsubishi was riding high, and the 3000 GT was proof of that, which we'll get into as we go. The car is a bit of a conundrum, really. It's on its release, in its most advanced form, in its most equipped form, the VR4, there was no other car on the road that had as much advanced technology. Nothing else like it. I mean, it used supercar equipment before supercars were using it, and it was as futuristic a production vehicle as you could buy at any price. You'd have to go to Formula One if you wanted to get all the shit that the car had on it at the time. In a way, it's just absolutely amazing. But it does not enjoy the same sort of hallowed position in car culture today as the Toyota Supra of the same time, or, the JDM, 3 letters that make me want to vomit when I say them, but the JDM Nissan Skyline, or even the 300ZX at the time, probably enjoys more current popularity. And there are some theories why that is. But one I haven't heard before, and the one that I'm going with, is to blame Chrysler for it, for having the Dodge Stealth. Mitsubishi and Chrysler had a partnership at the time, and there was some badge engineering going on, and they badge engineered this car, the 3000 GT, turned it into a Dodge Stealth, and it was just too similar. I mean, it's one thing to do it to a generic sedan or a minivan, change a fender, change a bumper, nobody really cares, but to do it to a high-end sports car seems really more damaging. I mean, GM wouldn't even do it with the Corvette. They wouldn't do the Pontiac Banshee because it would compete with the Corvette. So to have two high-end cars with the same underpinnings, mostly the same body, and, otherwise different badges, I think it just cheapened the whole thing. In the same vein, I also blame the success of the base models, particularly on the Stealth, that might as well have had Goodyear Assurance white walls and window cranks with a Secretary's Love Me banner across the top of the windshield. I think it just served to cheapen the car overall, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This is, again, a first-generation 3000 GT. It was called the GTO in Japan, not after, well, it was after the original Ferrari GTO, but it wasn't. It was after a 70s Mitsubishi coupe called the GTO, and it was a continuation of that. But obviously, that name isn't going to work in America because there's a car running around with that name on it that's already pretty famous. So the 3000 GT it became. And it's thought of as a sports car here in America, but really it's more of a global grand tourer in the, sort of in the realm of the Porsche 928 or even the Chevy Camaro Z28 or maybe even the Jaguar XJS. I mean, it's not a small car, nor is it light. In its fully equipped form, it topped out over 3,800 pounds, which is another reason maybe the car, doesn't have the legs of some of its more sporting siblings or cousins or, whatever you want to call them. It weighed more than all of its Japanese competition, hundreds of pounds more than the Supra or Datsun or Skyline, and that's part of its issue. But when it came out, it was absolutely revolutionary. I mean, Japan was riding really high economically in the late 80s and early 90s. The yen was strong. The dollar was weak. There was tremendous success for them in consumer manufacturing with everything from, home electric. I mean, Mitsubishi made some great home stereos and VCRs and appliances and the cars, electronics. Everybody thought stuff made in Japan was great. They bought it up in droves, and there was a ton of money going around. And of course that made the companies very well to do and had plenty of money for research and development. Honda saw the Accord become the best-selling car in America. That was a rather big deal, obviously, at the time. Toyota launched Lexus to compete with the Germans, which it did very successfully. And Nissan had developed sort of a sports car image with the Maxima, the 4D SC, if you remember that. Sticker on the windows, four-door. My sister had one. It was a piece of shit, but she loved it. And they also had the 300ZX. And, of course, Subaru had, Subaru had Subaru, and the people in Vermont loved them. But Mitsubishi, of course, an age-old Japanese company with roots probably going back to the samurai, and the proud maker of the A6M0, by the way, that had devastated Pearl Harbor, they needed to come up with something to sort of ensconce them firmly with their ultra-successful domestic competitors, and enter the 3000 GT. In its top-level VR4 form, it would have two turbochargers, four-wheel steering, ABS brakes, an electronically adjustable suspension, electronically adjustable aerodynamics, and even electronically adjustable exhaust note. In 92, it would have a driver adaptive transmission, as did my Gallant, or at least the automatic version. I mean, this thing was a rolling technological masterpiece, way ahead of its time. Again, you'd have to go to Formula One to get the sort of tech this thing had in it from the factory. They left nothing out. But some of the stuff wouldn't even become mainstream on supercars for another 2 decades. I mean, now every fast car has moving spoilers and, your mom's minivan probably has adjustable transmissions and suspensions, but back then it was all pretty rare, and it was pretty wild to see it all in one car. But of course it also made it expensive. And at the time, frankly, the styling was pretty radical. There's some talk that it sort of shared design cues with the Ferrari 348, which I see. I think it also sort of preempted the 92 Firebird when that came out. The pop-up headlights, which I love, the swooping Coke bottle body and flared fenders. It's got a little bit of that going, too. And you got the air dam with the fog lights. You got vents at the front of the wheels, in the front and the back. You got big air vents on the hood. You've got these big swoopy mirrors. You've got a giant rear spoiler. The car definitely had some radical styling for the time, and I remember that. I mean, kids my age, and I was a kid, I was in my early 20s anyway, we lusted after it. I didn't, because I like big American V8s and Firebirds and stuff, but, a lot of the people that I knew really did love it. for the way it looked and the Dodge Stealth and whatnot. But, you know, it also appealed to girls. I don't remember that being true of the Z28s and Trans Ams at the time. But anyway, look, I'm going to pause it there for a minute, collect my thoughts, then we're going to get into the styling on this particular car. So bear with me one moment. All right, so let's take a look at this thing and the styling and whatnot. You know, the first thing you notice, of course, is the Mitsubishi logo on the bumper. A guy named Yataro Iwasaki founded Mitsubishi about 150 years ago, primarily as a maritime shipping company, which, of course, was, you know, big in Japan. Everyone's big in Japan, ha ha ha. But that's why it was founded. And Mitsubishi translates into English. The word Mitsubishi as 3 diamonds, which of course is what we have here. 3 diamonds is their logo, which is said to stand for integrity, reliability, and success, which was, they were the 3 pillars of Mr. Iwasaki's, you know, business fundamentals, and that's representative of them. So it's kind of a neat thing. And of course that, you know, rode the Japanese Zeros that did attack Pearl Harbor. But we're all over that now, as we are with Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Porsche, that sort of thing. Bygones be bygones. Look, it's a very swoopy design. Again, in 90 through 93, it had these pop-up headlights, which I'm a sucker for. Put them on any car, and I'm probably going to like that car. I could just pop up the headlights. In fact, I'm going to pop them up right now. I mean, why the hell not? Let's just pop them up. Yeah, you see, I mean, that is just absolute sex on wheels, in my opinion. But anyway, you see those big fender top, hood top, fake bumps there on the hood. Actually, they were probably put in there to accommodate for the electronically controlled suspension, which we'll get into. But you see the air dam, plenty of air intake, big pointy fog lights down there leading the way, brake cooling ducts at the back of the bumper, which may or may not be functional, and it doesn't matter. More ground effects down the side, more air cooling ducts, you know, lots of swoopy lines. You've got sort of a fighter jet style greenhouse, you know, with a canopy. Again, reminiscent of the Camaro Firebird, but not quite. And I think very cool. I like the very thin A-pillars and C-pillars. I think that looks neat, the way they've got the red in there, but they put enough black structural shit to make it look, you know, again, a little more swoopy, particularly with tinted windows. You've got 5-star alloys, 16 at this point. They came out with 17s later. If this were the VR4 version with the option, that spoiler at the back would electronically adjust up and down, as would a little air dam at the front, and that was controlled automatically by speed, and also could be user deployed, which is all pretty neat, and again, very rare for the time. You see the decorative sort of swoopy shit around the license plate. You've got the quad pipes coming out the back, a little diffuser at the bottom. I mean, the car definitely has some impact. It's got a rear wiper, which is neat. You don't see that on cars anymore. You've got a big glass sunroof that takes up the whole thing. You know, obviously it doesn't retract, but it can be popped up and down, and I suspect it can be removed, although I haven't tried or examined it. But, you know, again, at the time, the styling was pretty impactful, and for whatever reason, it hasn't come through, you know, into the modern era. It's not beloved again the way the Supra or the GTR is. It's maybe because the styling was a little bit forced. I mean, it incorporates all of these great features, but it almost does it just to do it. It's like, oh my God, we got to get all this stuff in. The same they did with the tech inside. You can tell that they were on an absolute mission to build one of the more interesting cars out there. And again, they do all of that, and then all of a sudden it becomes a Dodge Stealth as well, which is just fascinating to me. But anyway, let's have a look inside the hatch. Some little popper right here. Must have good struts to support that spoiler, which is pretty heavy. There you can see we have a cargo cover, which is nice again if you're going to put children back here. You know, the sun's not going to beat down on them too hard. They've got that over the top of them. There's no real little hooks or loops you could bungee them down with. And they're probably going to roll forward and go into that crevice if you hit the brakes too hard. But otherwise, it's not a bad place to put some kids. This one has an aftermarket Alpine CD player installed. It looks, yeah, there it is, just kind of floating around. You know, that's very 90s, very cool from my perspective. You open this up here, you got your donut spare, which is nice and slimline, so you still get some hatch space. And all in all, it's a very functional and usable trunk. And you can see they've got these little stiffeners, rubber things in here. This is the kind of shit that, you know, cuts down on there it is where it bounces, you know, squeaks, rattles, that kind of thing. That's part of the quality of the Mitsubishi that sort of helped it be, as you know, the thing was pretty expensive in its day. I think the equivalent, if you're top of the line, you're probably talking the equivalent of 70 plus grand today. But you did get something for that money. Have a look under the hood. I haven't popped the hood on this thing yet. I don't know what we're going to see under here. I know it doesn't have struts. It's going to have a prop rod, and this is going to be a pain in the... No, it does have struts. Okay, so here it is. This is a very... You see it's got the tuned runners as well, which was, of course, pretty cool at the time. But it's a 3-liter 6G72 engine, which was actually used fairly prolifically in a variety of different cars. I think even a Hyundai later on. So it's not a rare engine. But for the 3000 GT, they did tweak it. Although they had 3 different versions. They had a 12-valve single overhead cam version with about 162 horsepower, and that was in the maybe 164. That was in the base models, in the Stealth and in the 3000 GT, the ones that had window cranks. And again, I think part of the reason that these cars don't pull super money today is because so many of those things were out there. Bump it up to this one, the SL version, which I presume stands for Sport Luxury, and it's basically a depressurized turbo. And I think, honestly, if this had been the only base model, the car, again, would have been more historically successful, if not more financially successful at the time. This one does have a double overhead cam version, puts out about 222 horsepower, and it's very, very peppy and proper. 24 valves again per, 4 valves per cylinder. Very, very high-tech motor for the time. Get into the VR4 version, it has twin turbos, puts out about 300 horsepower, and becomes, you know, even a little bit more supercar-ish, certainly in the Corvette and twin-turbo Datsun area. You know, it was fast. You turn 15-second quarter miles, you know, 5 seconds to 60. Later on, 6 seconds in early versions. It was a quick car. You can see, yeah, they have cutouts there, so it must be for those shock towers that they have to have those humps in the hood in order to make them clear, which is interesting. And speaking of that, it has this ECS suspension, electronically controlled suspension, which was pretty cutting edge at the time. And what that meant was, okay, so you got 4-wheel independent, obviously, and then you've got these little motors inside the struts that when the driver would select, you know, a certain setting, the motor would turn the shaft inside the strut, make it either flow more or less hydraulic fluid, which would in turn stiffen or soften it for a smooth ride or for a stiff ride. And, you know, this is the stuff of commonplace today. But back then, it wasn't quite as... I think you could get it in the Corvette, probably Porsche had it, but not many cars had that setup, not even many supercars. You could get a 5-speed manual in them. You could get a 4-speed automatic. In '92, that 4-speed, it became the Invex, and my Gallant had that, INVECS. And this is the kind of car manufacturer jargon that just makes me want to vomit. It stood for Intelligent and Innovative Vehicle Electronic Control System. And what it basically was a driver adaptive transmission that used fuzzy logic, of which I know quite a bit of, in order to sort of match your driving style over time. You know, if you're a hot rodder, it set itself up to be a hot rodder. And if you're not, it set itself up to shift gently. And Mercedes also did that quite a bit, and probably every car maker does now. But back then, again, it was kind of rare. In '93, it became a Getrag 6-speed, which was a much more bulletproof trans and, you know, handled the power very well. And all in all, again, just a very, very advanced car. Four-wheel ABS disc brakes, rear-wheel steering on the VR4 models to make turn-ins and parking much easier. I think the Prelude had that as well. But again, all of the stuff together was pretty damn rare and very, very cool. So anyway, there it is, a little bit of the mechanical underneath. I'm going to take another pause there, and then we're going to hop inside the car, have a look inside, then go for a drive. So hold on one moment. All right, you see I got my tag on the back, getting ready to go. Let's have a look inside this thing. I do like the frameless glass. I think that's cool. You know, the quality of the interior on these cars is exceptional, and I remember that from my Galant. I mean, it did hold together well despite my intense desire to kill it. It actually held up very, very well, and I presume this one is going to be no different. I'm not a big fan of these sort of tack-on woody things you see these old guys doing, but you know, I took this car as a fresh trade-in. They haven't really put it through their shop yet or done any of the cosmetic stuff to it, so I presume that's probably going to go, and a few things. But you know, they're selling cars quick down there, and I didn't want to miss this one. You know, I've had a 3000GT on the list for a while. But anyway, look, you see the really supportive seats, and when you talk about the competition, the Corvette, the 300ZX, you know, the seats had to be pretty cool and had to be nice. In this SL version, again, sport luxury, they're pretty nice. You can also see they've got power and manual adjustments, at least the driver's side. They're well bolstered, they're comfy to sit in, and much nicer than the ones that were in my Galant. The back seats, a little bit of a joke. Look at those deep-ass buckets. I mean, you know, even a current version big-ass girl is going to sink right into that thing and end up looking normal because her rump's going to fill the whole bucket down there. Hopefully she doesn't have legs, though, because she won't be able to fit them in front of the seats. But short of not having legs, you're probably going to be fairly comfortable back there. You got 3-point seat belts. You got a little tiny, you know, kind of the capsule window, the same that was on the Apollo 13 to look out the side. And, of course, those do fold down to give more room. But I think all in all, your Canadians in the back are going to be friggin' miserable. Absolutely miserable. Do like the leather bunched up on the door panel. I find these switches a bit awkward, sort of this vertical on the side thing, but they're fine. You've got your locks, your 2 power windows, big chunky plastic stuff, which is cheap but doesn't feel it. Defrost ducts on the side windows. Get in here, and again, this is, I know they're going to have the leather guy come and fix up this steering wheel, which it'll look like new, but at the moment it's got this crappy cover on it, which is just terrible. Hornworks. You've got the radio control buttons at the bottom. A very nice, simple gauge layout. You've got 160 mile an hour speedo. 7,000 RPM tach. You know, with the red line at 7. 7 was a pretty high red line for the time. And, of course, that's part of the technological wonder that was this car. You get over here, you got your power mirrors, your dimmer, your headlight switch. You got your fog light switch here. This one runs out. They could do it again. So you can clean your headlights without turning them on. This is your rear defrost, and this is the electronically controlled suspension, which can go tour or sport. As was the style of Japanese cars at the time, you had a gauge pod over here, Datsun style, water temp, oil pressure, voltmeter, nice. Your, you know, your vents. It uses all this sort of molded soft touch shit that frankly does not hold up well, and it's why 90s and late 80s cars can be so tough to restore. This stuff just doesn't. In this car, obviously, is well preserved. It's not bad. You got a little poke up there, but for the most part, it's nice. But man, one of these things kept in the sun, the whole thing just explodes. Yeah, these gauge. Let me turn this thing on. Fire it up. Yeah, it comes to life. The power antenna is broken. You hear that just grinding, which drives me crazy. But I'm sure that's another thing they're going to address. They had these incredibly cool colored liquid crystal displays. They weren't liquid. They're pretty phosphorus or something. I wish it worked. That way you'd be able to see it. But of course, as time goes on, this car's now, I don't even want to say it, 30 years old. The display has stopped working, but the AC still works fine, which is great. And maybe even a little too fine. Let me turn that way down. But it's nice and cold, as it should be in a Japanese car. Love the stereo. I had a similar stereo in the Galant, but not nearly as high-end. I mean, this thing is just badass. You've got a built-in EQ, you've got seating position, you get sort of an image of how much electronics were in. Let me get the shifter out of the way. Cassette deck here. Here's your cruise control switch. Back then there weren't a lot of 12-volt accessories. The reason for this one being here is for a radar detector, not for charging your cell phone. That would come later. Also had an auxiliary input for one of those little, portable CD players like I had back then. Very, very neat stuff. I'm sure that I don't have a cassette on me, but I'm sure it sucks it in electronically and has different musical. What a great radio. I'm sorry, again, I'm a product of my time, and this is just a cool radio for me. This transmission, this Invex thing, you see you've got a power and economy setting. This big dongle of a very sexually disturbing looking shifter. Same one in the Gallant, by the way, with the shift lock ever since that Audi 5000 thing prominently displayed. Overdrive button on the side. Back here you have your actual cigarette lighter, which is quite weird with the finger guards. And this is your power seat bolsters, part of that luxury sport thing. And you got a little ashtray there because people still smoked. In here you got your cup holder and this fantastic Alpine remote CD player control. Again, all very 90s. And then this thing removes and you can keep your drugs and guns underneath and anything you need as you're driving along. Little pinch glove box, dice size, good place to put some weapons. Very high quality stuff at the time, which of course the Japanese cars had. Get up here, you've got your different light settings, and you can remove this big sun guard and just have the glass. You can also then tilt up your sunroof over here, which I'm not going to do, but you could do all that crap, and it's all very lovely. So I have to grab something off Peter before I go, so let me pause it there, then we're going to hop in, turn it on, go for a drive. Bear with me just one moment. What do we have there? Off, interior, on, and oh, that's the back wiper anyway. Oh god, now I've smeared the whole thing in the windshield. Anyway, alright, bear with me, I'll be back, we'll go for a spin. Alright, so let's do this. There's a big dongle of a shifter. Got that into drive. God, that does remind me of the Galant. Let's see what we got. So you're in a very sort of sporty seating position. There's no doubt about that. You're laid back. You're pretty comfortable. And there's leaves attacking us and sprinklers. Look at that. That's fantastic to get around that. And, look, being the SL automatic version, it's not tremendously sporty, I mean, this is kind of the secretary, older executive guy car. It's not the hot rod boy racer version that the VR4 with the stick would be, but it's still a nice driving car. Very, very smooth, and, the steering is precise. The brakes are The brakes are good. You know, they haul the car down. You can tell it has very sporty roots, which is, of course, what Mitsubishi intended. I mean, the thing was going to be a supercar of sorts designed to compete with the Corvette, you know, with the 300ZX, with the Supra. It was supposed to be an alternative to those, and it was. And it was a real car guy car. And again, to me, the unfortunate part of that was the base, the Camaro, the Z28, the IROC ended up with the same fate with all those base models out there. You know, they cheapened the overall. There was no cheap Supra, you know, at the time. Even the 300ZX was turbo and non-turbo, but it was still pretty sporty. I mean, you could get this 160 horsepower Dodge Stealth with window cranks, and I think that took away from the impact of the VR4 completely. But, you know, they're coming into their own. People are sort of starting to train this Invex automatic to have sporty shifting. We're on what? We're on tour mode there. If I press the ECS, now we're in sport. That should stiffen up the suspension. We're also in sport shifting mode. And it's just, you know, a fun, big GT car to cruise. It's, you know, a Camaro, frankly, with higher quality and more tech. So look, anyway, if you have an interest in this thing, you can give the guys at Autohaus a call, 239-263-8500, on the web at autohausnaples.com. I'm not going to make you suffer through the traffic driving this morning, but, you know, it is what it is. But anyway, nice clean car. I'm sure it's going to be, you know, much more refined once it comes out of their process and not just a trade-in. And I think anybody be happy to have it. So give those guys a call if you have an interest. And otherwise, we're going to come up with some more fun stuff. Tomorrow, I think I have a modern Shelby GT350 from Dave the Wholesaler, which ties into that little Shelby thing we did recently, so that'll be fun. And otherwise, we'll come up with whatever else we can come up with. So thank you for having a look. Really appreciate it. Here's a little pop-up headlight action, and we will see you with the next one. Take care.